Hello, Feminine Road Mappers. It is Gina here, and welcome to the very first day of 2020. It is January 1st, and today we are kicking off the year with Dr. Ken Druck. There is no way I could give a bio to cover all of the lifetimes that he's lived, but we're going to be talking about making 2020 a life well lived, and whether or not navigating with a roadmap, making resolutions, or making unresolutions to get you to the life that you want to live. That's our topic today. So without further ado, I want to welcome you, Dr. Ken, to the show today.
Good to be with you, Gina.
It
Happy
is
New
my
Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I can't believe it. We're starting a whole new decade. Can you imagine?
2020 with
You're
2020 vision.
right.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Now
when movies?
all of us have 2020 vision. We know what we want. We are realized souls. We have fully awakened. We've set the path forward. We know what the critical path is to get to where we want to go. And let's do it.
It's like the perfect number to really just hone in on the life that you want to go after, isn't it?
It is an amazing time for all of us to be alive. And what we do with that, to have all the choices in front of us, and to have your show and shows like yours to help us guide that path and define the character of our best possible futures is really a gift. So thanks for starting the year with this gift.
Thank you for being the gift. And with that being said, why don't you share, because I had the privilege of talking to you before we hit record, but you have an amazing story. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself and what led you to this thought about unresolutions?
Well, I would bet that if we sat anybody who's listening down in front of a computer like I'm doing right now, and we asked them to tell their journey and their story, it would be just as amazing as mine. I have been blessed with many seasons of this life. And having grown up in New York, the second generation removed from a Holocaust, and everything that meant, and having evolved, having learned how to, as many of us did, many of us, even as little kids, we were kind of watching the room. You know, what's everybody feeling? What's going on here? What's everybody doing? What's important? What is this thing called a life, and how do I live it well? How do I show up, and who am I? And so all those things were very important to me, and I became that observing young man. You know, fast forward to the beginning of a career. I grew up in an era, I had the honor of marching with Martin Luther King. I had the honor of protesting the Vietnam War and going to Washington, and also supporting all my buddies who came back without a leg and an arm, or who had lived in a war zone and were so heartsick and traumatized. So having lived through that era, I had some ideas about what I thought social justice was and what it meant to prevent violence, to get out in front of that part of our nature that would escalate and so on. So I think having lived through those chapters, I was asking questions in an era where women were waking up. Women's centers were going up like fast food restaurants, women's studies programs. And I was asking, what does it mean to be a guy? What lurks in the hearts and souls of us as men? What happens in our friendships? Do they really mean something? Do we learn from each other as guys? Or is it all posing and posturing? And what about our dads? And so I had all these questions about being a man in the world, and I wanted to be a dad as well. And so there are all these burning questions, and the first chapter of my work life was to begin giving men's workshops all around the United States and around the world, and writing a book that became a bestseller called The Secrets Men Keep. And I ended up on Oprah, you know, with I told Oprah I would only go on with an all male audience, just guys, because I didn't want to be the only guy talking. I wanted to hear what other guys would have to say if they felt safe to talk about what really they wanted in their relationships, what they wanted from their lives, what kind of a father they had or wanted to be, and so on and so forth. So that was chapter one of my amazing life. And that evolved into, and I think with each chapter of my life, I've written a book. It was my way of going into deep meditation, is to immerse myself in my own reflective thoughts, studies, talking to people, researching. And so the second chapter was being a father. I was blessed with 2 daughters, and these amazing daughters, the highlight of my life. There's still nothing more amazing a human being can do than to make another human being.
Yeah.
And the highlight of my life was the birth of both of my daughters, and just welcoming them into the world and watching this miracle unfold as a father, and realizing that I could be a part of this blossoming into being a human being. So I wrote a book then called How to Talk to Your Kids, and immersed myself in being a dad. And that process continued, the center of my life, even though I was still writing books and coaching and consulting and working in the field of psychology. The highlight of my life truly were my kids and being a good dad. And so that evolved into, fast forward into 1996, and my daughter has blossomed into an extraordinary young woman. She's giving programs with me throughout the world on parent effectiveness. We're giving a program. We gave a program in Australia called the Parent Report Card. And my daughter Jenna is turning into my teacher. It's an amazing thing. When our kids become our teachers, they pass us. If we're doing parenting right, 2 things happen. Number one, we have scar tissue on our tongue. All the time we fight it and just shut up and listen. Because listening was the most powerful way we could be present. We could really be with them and get to know them and have them get to know us. Mm-hmm. And the second thing was to empower them so that they pass us. Yes. They rise up. Parenting is rising up, and it's them rising up to greater heights and us being a part of that. So
yes.
So I did that, was very involved, and fast forward to 1996, where my daughter said, Dad, I want to go on this trip. They travel around the world on a ship. It's called Semester at Sea, and it's going to be, and I said, of course, this is going to be a launching pad for the rest of your life. She said, yeah, I know the world's bigger than California, or Colorado and the places we had lived. And she left, and I kissed my daughter goodbye at the airport and sent her on a journey of a lifetime. And that was the last time I ever saw my daughter, Jenna, because she died on the Grand Trunk Road in India in a bus accident on her Semester at Sea program. So my life, as I knew it, ended. And suddenly I was in the ashes of my plan A and all the dreams in the future. My daughter's life had been lost to her, and there was no greater pain. My trip to the bottom of pain afforded me many things: an understanding of brokenness, an understanding of choicelessness, and an understanding of compassion, because when we've gone to the bottom of pain, we're in a position to understand the suffering in the world. The suffering that many people, not of privilege, as I had, go through every day in this life somewhere in the world. And so my new life, I started a nonprofit foundation called the Jenna Druck Center. And we had 2 programs. The first one was a program my daughter had created when she was 16 years old, a leadership program for girls. Jenna came up to me and said, Dad, this is the best we can do in the way we show girls how to be human beings during their teen years. We suck. This is terrible. Girls are mean to themselves. Girls are mean to each other. Surely we can do better than that. And she created a leadership program for girls. Wow. And so after she passed, the Jenna Druck Center had a leadership program. 18,000 girls went through it.
Wow.
And we also had another program called Families Helping Families. and Families Helping Families was a community volunteer-based program to help. There were about 800 families in San Diego alone who lost a child every year, and we would help those families. But soon we became national and international, and I kind of became the go-to guy for when there was a loss. CNN would call. When there was a loss, I would get asked to help out. So I helped coordinate bereavement after 9/11 in New York. And I've been called into all the major tragedies. I've been helping families at Sandy Hook after the massacre there in Columbine and so on. So the chapter of my life that chose me after my daughter's death was about resilience. It was about rising up out of the ultimate adversities and becoming the better version of ourselves. And I started creating a roadmap for what that meant. And it's a roadmap that's as relevant today as we start a new year as it was over the years that I developed it. And it was a roadmap called the 6 honorings. The way if we've gone through a living loss, which is nobody died, but we have somebody in our family who's strung out, alcoholic, an addict, who's estranged, who has moved away, who's missing, who's gotten a bad diagnosis, who's been in an accident, who's incarcerated or deployed. So how do we deal with living losses, and how do we deal with life losses? And the 6 honorings became a code for how to do that. I've had the honor in my life of being able to share that with audiences worldwide. But it led to, and by the way, I took out when you said, Ken, would you share a little bit about your journey? This was the Secrets Men Keep journey. The How to Talk to Your Kids book I don't have right here, but this is what evolved. The spoken word CD that was given to all the 9/11 families, called Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One.
Wow.
And that evolved into a book that I wrote about the distilled essence of everything I'd learned about loss and resilience, called The Real Rules of Life, Balancing Life's Terms with Your Own. And then an interesting thing happened after 20 years of running my daughter's foundation. I could hear both my earth daughter, Steffi, and my angel daughter, Jenna, who's with me always, saying, Dad, shouldn't you be getting a life? You're going to turn 65. Shouldn't you be getting a life about now? Don't you have a bucket list or something like that? And I could hear both my daughters saying, Dad, 80 hours a week, helping families who are in the darkest hour and moment of their lives might not be the best way to spend 80 hours a week. What else would you do? And I had to ask myself, what would I do? What would it mean to age courageously?
Yes.
So then I wrote a book called Courageous Aging, Your Best Years Ever Reimagined. And I took myself through a reimagining process. This is like a library. I'm giving you this whole spiel about
I know, it's so great,
my journey. Thank you. And so Courageous Aging, I started traveling around the country and going on CNN again. Don Lemon said, oh, I've got to read this book. And it went right to the top of the Amazon bestsellers list. But as I traveled around the country asking people about what courageous aging, what it meant to them to age courageously, what I found was that people who were 40, who were 35, 45, who were younger, who had parents they were watching get older, had many questions about their parents. How do I be a good son or daughter? My dad's getting older. My mom is getting older. What can I do to be the best possible son or daughter? And I started writing a book for my daughter, Steffi, and her husband, Tony, called Raising an Aging Parent, realizing that raising up, again, it was another opportunity. And our sandwich generation kids, your kids and mine, Gina,
Yep.
are in the squeeze because they've got parents, moms It's like, my God, mom turned 50 or 55 or 45, whatever. And dad's getting older, and they're watching us get older. They're wanting to be the best possible expression of themselves. So how do we navigate the second half of life as a family? And I wrote this, and we were trying to figure out what to put on the cover. And after my daughter, Steffi, had twins 4 months ago, I was holding her hand. That's my hand. That's her hand. And her little baby reached out and grabbed my pinky, one of her sons. And we said, that's it, that picture, that's the cover of the new book.
That
So
is amazing.
there's raising an aging parent. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And it kind of leads us right up to, it's like, what is this life well lived? We all have a journey. We all have a story. What is this life well lived? And how do I live forward? It's the new year. It's 2020. It's a new decade. There's an old saying, if you don't know where you're going, you'll get there. Should I plot out a goal? Should I have goals for the new year? Should I structure things? Whether I keep them or not is another story. Should I structure my vision for the future? Should I do my vision board and cut things out of magazines and paste them in? And is that the best way forward? Or maybe I've done that a lot of my years. Maybe it's time for me to put myself in the wind. Maybe it's time for UNresolutions, for me to just show up more than I ever have in this moment, this miraculous, amazing moment of my life, and to notice what's already happening, to get my focus on this moment, on my own heartbeat, my own breath, my own moment, what's happening in my relationships, what challenges, what's weighing most heavily on my heart, what's making my heart sing at this point in my life. And focus on that rather than setting looking at the future constantly. How many of us have almost gotten addicted? We miss the present. We miss everything that's happening right now because we're so focused on what's today. Are they coming to get the trash tomorrow? Or what's happening in the middle of January or at the end of January, or when am I going on vacation in March or something like that?
Yeah.
So,
that's an amazing point, and I want to comment on that, because that's a journey mentally I've taken in the last year, is really recognizing that I love planning for the future, but sometimes I have been guilty of living too far ahead and not knowing what day it is and losing track of the moments that are happening right now. So I'm just going to confirm that it is an addiction, and I'm interested in hearing your perspective on how we can find the balance, because it's good to have a plan. It's how do you balance the now and the then? How do you navigate that?
that's beautifully said. The answer is embedded in your question. Sometimes it's finding the question that we should be asking ourselves every day as we wake up. How can I create a day in which I balance what I've got to do? Where's my to-do list? Oh my God, look at what I've got to do today. Look at my calendar. Look at what I've committed to, my commitments, my responsibilities. How do I balance that with with looking outside? Oh my goodness, look at the sky. Look at the light changing in the sky. Or could I take a walk in a park or on the beach? I live close to the beach. Could I take a walk somewhere beautiful? Could I put on some beautiful music and just breathe it in, the magnificence of that music? Or could I stop and have a talk, maybe with my aging parent, maybe with my son or daughter who's squeezed because they're trying to have a life of their own, but they have me and they have kids and they're going to school or whatever they're doing. Maybe settling in and really listening to them there's still no more powerful experience that we can have than the feeling of being understood,
Yeah.
of being met, of being really listened to, of having another person sitting across who's really curious and has our well-being at heart and is trustworthy.
Yeah.
So maybe it's balancing the stuff of life, that to-do list, and waking up every day. It's Groundhog Day. It's like, all right, how am I going to balance that challenge? My terms and life's terms. How am I going to balance that? And every chapter of life has those kinds of challenges that really inspire us to have newfound strength, newfound faith, newfound courage, newfound balance. Every chapter of life. Right now, in our family, we're going through. My father-in-law is extremely ill, and he's so sick that for the first time in his life, he's facing the possibility that he's not going to be around much longer. And how do you show up and make every day matter and every day count, even when your time is running down or time is running out for somebody that you love? How do we show up? How do we balance? Because when we're in a crisis, or when it's the end of life for somebody we love, what happens? Everything else falls away. It's all stuff. Please, I'll do that later. What becomes most precious and most important, is the love. Is the love that we give, the support, the caregiving, the selfless service that we show to the people that we really cherish. So how do we not wait for a crisis to be that way? How do we get all those balancing things going? And, do we do it by making a resolution? I'm going to become a more balanced person. Or is it just a felt sense of our own presence, of putting ourselves in the wind more, not setting a goal up here from the shoulders up, but from the heart, giving ourselves greater breath, greater sense of awakeness and presence and awareness? How do we allow ourselves rather than force ourselves?
So, Dr. Ken, I'm hearing everything that you're saying, and I know for myself, this is a struggle that I've had because I love to plan for the future. I love to think ahead. I like to have a word for my year. I like to really have something to anchor myself to, because for someone like me, I like to do all the things. I don't know if you're like that, but all the things sound fun to me. And so I need something to anchor myself. But I think that what I hear you saying is you can take a resolution and you can turn it into a resolution. I can resolve today.
Yes.
How do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to be? You can have the larger ones, but how do you chunk it down to
Yeah.
being present? Is that kind of what I'm hearing you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. You can have, we can have resolutions that are things like I resolve that I'm going to lose 15 pounds by the middle of March. We can have object resolutions, and then we can have process resolutions. Things that are more of our way of being. It's our way of being.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's listening. It's calming our thoughts enough to really tune in and listen to that other person. Or sometimes it's a process resolution or unresolution that says, I'm going to listen to the beat of my own heart more. I'm so much about pleasing people, or I'm this type E woman, everything to everybody else. I'm going to learn how to be present to me.
Now there's a challenge,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. My slogan last year was, take your foot off your throat and put your hand on your heart. How many of us are harshly self-critical? Harshly, we're kind of watching and judging all the time.
Ourselves, right?
Ourselves. We're so about being hyper vigilant and judging and what's that? And, it's like being in a courtroom with only a prosecuting attorney waving that admonishing finger in our
Yeah.
face. But there's no judge, there's no jury, there's no defense attorney to say, Your Honor, I object. She's being harshly critical of herself. That's not true. So we have to somehow change the process. It's like, I'm going to catch myself being harshly self-critical, beating myself up, judging myself, telling myself something that I've gotten into a bad habit of saying to me. And instead, I'm going to lead with my self-compassionate voice, with the voice of patience, of acceptance, of understanding, of gentleness and kindness.
Yeah.
I'm going to lead with self-compassion, with understanding. And that's the way I'm going to take myself into and through the day. And I'm going to practice that. I'm going to cultivate that capacity to be kinder to me, to be a better listener to myself. And when we do that, guess who else we become a better listener to? Everybody else.
Yeah.
Because suddenly we've humanized ourselves to ourselves. Mm-hmm. We've allowed ourselves to become that imperfect version, that perfectly imperfect version of who we are, a work in progress. And we're now reflecting that out instead of projecting out, expecting everybody to be perfect and on time. And, the thing that I love, years ago, I adopted something that whenever I ask somebody of something in an email, I end it by saying, love either way. In other words, if you don't do what I've asked you to do, I still love you. There's no condition in our relationship. If it's possible for you to do it, if it fits for you to do it, if it's right for you to do it, then thank you. That would be a wonderful gift for me to receive from you. Can I give you another great one?
Yes.
That I think is a New Year's unresolution?
Yeah.
It's to fix our receivers. What's our receivers? It's the part of us that receives love, appreciation, gratitude, affection. Because many of us are walking around, these are process changes, with broken or impaired receivers. People are trying to tell us that they love us, that they appreciate us, but we're not letting it in. We're blocking it. No, we're saying, oh, you couldn't be right. What about this? What about that I didn't do? Our receiver is somehow not receiving the I love yous, the thank yous, the appreciation. We're not letting it go in. And so we don't internalize it. And we're walking around constantly thinking we haven't done enough. We're not enough. We're not this enough or that enough, rather than learning to inhale all the love and the gratitude, to allow ourselves to feel loved, to feel appreciated in all those ways. And that's another kind of New Year's unresolution, is to allow yourself to graciously receive what people are giving and to notice and to say thank you. I have a secret signal, Gina. If you ever see me giving a talk in front of a group or I'm on stage somewhere, and after I finish my talk, I used to run off the stage. It's like, thanks. Let me get out of here. I got, Instead, you'll see me put my hand on my heart, because that's the way I've trained my brain and my nervous system and my emotional heart to receive. And I'll stand there because I realize that people are trying to say, thank you, Ken. You just poured your heart and soul out to us. And thank you for everything you've learned and what you've done on your journey, and that you've shared so generously with us. And we're trying to say thank you. What if I run away from that? Where have I left people who are in my audience? Rather than looking into their eyes and saying, You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your appreciation. I take it with me. So,
It's like completing the loop.
yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not stopping it in the middle. You're allowing it to
Exactly.
continue to flow, which is what's healthy and natural.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wanted to show you one of the things I didn't show you earlier in the show that I think is one of my favorite things that I wrote. I write lots of little pamphlets. This is called the Handbook of Self-Care.
Yeah.
Because what most of us don't realize is that we have, I call them the self-care saboteurs.
Ah, yes.
You know, perfectionism and feelings of undeservedness, never enough perfectionism. We allow guilt, shame, fear, and embarrassment to shut us down,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. But anyhow, it's
That's something to really that's a good framework as we're looking into 2020. This is airing on January 1st, 2020, and a lot of people have either done the work of thinking about what they want the new decade and new year to look like, their 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. I don't go that far. I try to work 1 year and in quarters, but those are really great frameworks because you said earlier that answers are in the questions. So maybe we could think about resolutions less of statements and more about making good
yeah.
questions.
What am I going to hold in? You know, one of my favorite people on the planet. We're so, we're so blessed to have people rolling around on the planet right now
Mhm.
who are such great teachers. One of them, who I love, is a woman named Pema Chodron. And Pema teaches meditation. She's a Buddhist nun, and she teaches meditation. And she says, make anything you want the object of your meditation. So you could make anything. You could make your anger the object of your
Hmm.
meditation. And it's what you're trying to cultivate and deepen an understanding of. So you could say, instead of making a New Year's resolution, if I just sit for 5 minutes in the morning or sometime during my day, everything good starts with a deep breath. And take that deep breath and allow myself to think about how I want to be different. What I want to cultivate is a greater patience. What do I want to make the object of my meditation so I can watch myself in my process? How about if I make my impatience the object of my meditation? And I'm just going to sit and think about all the things, allow myself to be impatient, imagining everything I'm impatient about. What am I in a rush to do? What am I in a rush to receive? Who would I hurry? You know, we call it one of my old mentors and teachers, Mike Friedman, who coined the term type A behavior. He used to call it hurry sickness. How am I allowing my sense of urgency to prevail and preside over my life, rather than taking that deep breath and easing off and lightening up and slowing down and taking my foot off of my own throat
Mm.
and placing my to-do list over here while I turn on some beautiful music, while I go walk the dog or call a friend to go for a walk with me or a glass of wine. But it's just introducing a greater sense of ease into our lives. So it's our way of being every day, and sometimes it's so subtle we don't even know we're doing it.
Yeah.
We don't even know that's the way I'm doing it, until somebody says, "Yeah, look at you. Let me hold that mirror up. You rush around. You're trying to do so much. You know, is there the emotional freedom in you to do slightly less? Or is there a self-care saboteur operating over your shoulder at all times, watching you? And if you slow down, you get that kick, you get
Yeah.
the urging it's like, what are you doing wasting time? There's so much to do. You know who's going to be disappointed? We have all these saboteurs and pressures. And sometimes we're living under the shadow of a boss or a life partner who doesn't help that. We haven't spoken it to them and said, I'm going to try to learn this year to slow down and ease off. And I'm going to want your support. And I know you support the part of me that puts my foot down on the gas pedal, and the part of me that's an overachiever, and the part of me that gets so much done. And you're probably even dependent on me for doing all those things. But would you please, as the gift to me this year, help me ease off and slow down? So there are conversations as we set our unresolutions or our resolutions. It's so important to communicate those to the people in our lives who can either help support us or who are going to be there angrily pressuring us and wondering, where's the old Gina? Where'd she go? And
Yes.
who would expect us, who don't understand how important it is for our journey to be taking a slightly different turn that promotes our health and our well-being more, our happiness, our sense of ease, our capacity to enjoy the moments of life, to take in the gratitude and the appreciation for who we are and what we've already done.
Yeah.
So we're not functioning on fumes, looking around for approval and attention and adoration all the time.
At the beginning of a decade, it feels like a really good point to kind of look back and give credit.
Yeah.
And recognize and acknowledge, as well as maybe I wasn't as present, maybe I wasn't. And then using that to kind of spring the 2020 vision forward.
I love it. I love it. There's an exercise that I used to do a lot with the couples that I work with. And I would ask them each to go home and come back the following week with a list of 25 things they absolutely loved about each other. And it could be something the other person did 20 years ago. I love the time that you took me out and on a boat and we just rode together. I love your sense of humor. And they created these lists. And so often we don't realize what the other person and people in our lives, even our kids, and writing that list of 25 things I love about you, I love and appreciate about you, is amazing. But I've morphed that into 25 things I love and appreciate about me.
Now I know how hard that is for people to do.
It's like, oh my God, am I being selfish? Am I being narcissistic?
Yes.
Am I being, so we could be so self-critical that we say, that's a stupid idea. Don't do it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that with you.
Yeah.
We may reject the notion that could be a good and important thing about what we're learning to love and appreciate about ourselves, how we've come on this journey, and what we've learned and what we've unlearned.
There's the crux, what we've unlearned. Yes.
So I think it's critically important to do something like that in addition to what you suggested, which I love, which is if I were reimagining the better, smarter, more courageous, kinder, more self-compassionate version of me, or more efficient or effective version of me, what might that look like? Where would I start? Where would I go? Okay, sometimes I waste time. A lot of time I take these low priority things and I procrastinate and I distract myself. And they don't add up to anything that moves my life forward. And it's an indulgence. It's kind of like that Ben and Jerry's that's always that loves me unconditionally.
Calling your name.
Calling my name at 10 o'clock at night from the freezer.
Yeah.
Saying, Ken, I love you unconditionally. Don't you want to come in and have a little bit of Rocky
Come and
Road?
snuggle. It'll be great.
Yeah, but it's like the price I pay. So are there things that I'm paying a price for?
Mm,
Flirtations I'm having, or Ben and Jerry affairs that I've been having, or wasted time
yeah.
that I spend in front of a screen playing, doing something, watching something. Even now, with this coming year being, how do we self-manage our involvement? If you're like me and you're very involved in what's happening politically in this country, how do you manage that attention you're giving to
Mm,
what you believe in is in the best interests of our country or whatever country you're living in? How
right.
do you manage that without burnout, without burning yourself out, without burning the candle at both ends? How do you self-manage that so you're not going on long binges watching one new breaking news television station or another? I don't care
Right.
which side of the fence you're on there,
Right.
but or whether you're on the fence itself. But how do you self-manage that so you are the clear thinking, principled, heartful person that you want to be, who's making good and sound decisions and is doing something that's sustainable over time rather than, oh my God, I'm a burned out mess and I'm just gonna have to drop out of the whole thing.
Yeah. We keep coming back to the idea of balance because it's good to have a plan for the future. I think what I hear you saying, Ken, is it's it's how you execute the plan instead of it being just about the plan.
Yes,
Who am I becoming in the process of pursuing the plan? Is that
exactly.
correct?
Don't become the plan.
Yeah.
Become you.
Yeah.
Become the version of you that's already unfolding, that's already blossoming, that's already waking up, awakening into your next season or time of life, into that version of you that will continue growing and blossoming, God willing, fate willing, whatever you believe
Yeah.
controls the course of this life or your seasons. And that's a whole nother interesting question. When I talk about raising an aging parent or courageous aging, it's with that the last chapter in this is, how do we help a parent who is dying or who's on their last chapter of life? How do we support them in a way that they leave a legacy of love, not of chaos, so that every season of life is to be cherished, is important, is us evolving, and that even as we face the final chapters of life, that those are some of the most important times for us to evolve into whatever it is we're becoming. And I'm not going to sit here and give you a lecture or uh, tell you that I know with 100% certainty what this life evolves into after it's over, or whether it evolves into anything. I don't know. I don't know that. I remain in a fertile unknowingness when it comes to that. But I do know that showing up, even at that time in our lives, whether it's our time or it's the time of somebody that we love, that showing up, it can be some of the most important, purposeful, meaningful, soulful, heartful time to show up and to be present with those we love. It can also be some of the most beautiful and joyful moments of our lives.
You mention and you keep mentioning seasons, and as we kind of wrap up our time together today, I would love to have you just kind of encapsulate the vision for 2020. What would you want people to really think about as they're casting their own vision for this year, 2020, and this decade? How would you like to kind of distill that down to something that you really want them to hear from you?
Mhm. I'm speaking directly to you. And I'm telling you that Gina and I are going to come on January 1st, 2021. And we are going to look you in the eyes and we're going to say, you did it. You said, I am going to live a life and a year well lived. I'm going to imagine what a year well lived could be for me without holding back. What it would mean in my most important relationships, in my health and well being, in the life's work that I'm doing, in my creative, playful, lighthearted, joyful side, in my adventurous, pioneering side. I'm going to imagine that life well lived. And I'm going to do the best I can to live it so that I can be with you and Gina 1 year from today, sharing the joys, the challenges, the ups, the downs, the adventure that I've been on, and how it's going to evolve into an even better year in 2021. And that's
Yes.
my hope, my wish, my prayer for you, and my gratitude to you, Gina, for kind of convening this kind of a New Year's meeting so that we could share our journeys with each other.
Yes. I am so grateful for the work that you've done, for the integrity, the passion, and the heart that you brought to this conversation and just sharing your life with us. It's such a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
And to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So, everyone, please take the time to share this message. Subscribe down below so you can be with us January 1st, 2021, and also so you miss nothing in between. There will be links to Dr. Ken. There will be a share button that you can share to your friends. Let's make this year the best year we could imagine. Allow yourself to be courageous and curious. Trust yourself a little bit this year. Ease up on yourself a little bit this year and fly a little higher this year, my friends. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to more inspiring and powerful conversations as this year unfolds. Thank you, my friends.